At first glance, a folding shovel looked like one of the least important items a soldier could carry. It was small, silent, and rarely mentioned in heroic war stories. Yet on the battlefields of the Second World War, this humble tool often meant the difference between life and death. When German troops marched into Poland and later across Europe, they carried the Klappspaten, a compact folding shovel designed not just for digging trenches, but for survival under modern firepower. Warfare had changed. Artillery, machine guns, and air attacks made open ground deadly within seconds. Soldiers no longer fought standing upright for long. They fought from holes in the earth. German military doctrine understood this reality early. Training manuals emphasized one brutal rule: the moment you stop moving, you dig. Soldiers were drilled to create cover in minutes, not hours. The Klappspaten's design allowed them to dig while lying prone, keeping their profile low under enemy fire. In frozen soil, rubble, or muddy fields, this speed mattered. There are recorded accounts from the Eastern Front where German infantry survived Soviet artillery barrages simply because they managed to dig shallow foxholes moments before the shells landed. The shovel was not a secondary tool. It was protection against steel and fire falling from the sky. As the war intensified, Allied forces encountered this reality firsthand. American and British soldiers, used to heavier entrenching tools and slower digging methods, were often shocked by how quickly German positions seemed to appear out of nowhere. What looked like empty terrain could transform into a defended line within minutes. The folding shovel earned an unspoken reputation. It was never celebrated like rifles or tanks, but soldiers trusted it instinctively. Some even sharpened its edge, knowing it could serve as a last resort weapon in close combat. In the chaos of World War II, survival often depended on simple things. The German Klappspaten was not born from convenience, but from hard lessons learned in earlier wars. Its origins trace back to the late 19th century, when European armies began to realize that modern firepower demanded rapid field fortifications. After the devastating trench warfare of World War I, German military planners became obsessed with speed, efficiency, and mobility. Unlike many armies that treated entrenching tools as secondary equipment, Germany viewed them as an extension of the soldier himself. By the 1930s, Wehrmacht engineers refined the Klappspaten into a compact, folding design that could be carried on every soldier's belt without restricting movement. The blade locked firmly into place, creating a rigid tool despite its folding mechanism, a critical detail often overlooked by others. German engineering philosophy focused on function before comfort. The shovel was intentionally narrow, allowing soldiers to dig while lying flat, reducing exposure to enemy fire. Its weight was carefully balanced, heavy enough to cut through roots, frozen soil, and rubble, yet light enough to be carried on long marches. Materials mattered. Early Klappspaten blades were forged from high-carbon steel, heat-treated to resist bending or cracking. Even the hinge was overbuilt, designed to withstand repeated impacts without loosening. In field tests, soldiers were instructed to strike stones and frozen ground deliberately, exposing weak points before mass production. Training completed the design. German manuals did not simply explain how to carry the shovel, they taught how to think with it. Soldiers learned where to dig, how deep was enough, and when to stop. The Klappspaten was part of a broader doctrine that valued preparation over reaction. This philosophy explains why the Klappspaten outperformed similar tools. It was not innovative because it folded. It was effective because it embodied a system: design, material, training, and doctrine working together. To the German soldier, the Klappspaten was never considered optional equipment. It was as essential as a rifle or helmet because it answered the most immediate threat on the battlefield: exposure. In modern warfare, visibility meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant death. German infantry doctrine taught a simple principle: survival begins with cover. Whenever units halted, even briefly, soldiers were expected to dig. This habit was enforced through training, discipline, and battlefield experience. Veterans understood that the difference between a shallow scrape and a properly shaped foxhole could decide who lived through the next artillery strike. Accounts from the invasion of France in 1940 reveal how quickly German units adapted to hostile terrain. As columns paused under the threat of air attack, soldiers dropped to the ground and began digging instinctively. Within minutes, what had been an open field became a network of shallow fighting positions. Allied pilots later reported frustration at how fast German troops vanished after being spotted. On the Eastern Front, the Klappspaten became even more vital. Frozen soil, constant shelling, and sudden counterattacks left no time for heavy engineering equipment. Infantrymen relied on their folding shovels to carve shelter out of earth and ice. Soviet artillery was devastating, but soldiers who dug fast enough often survived when those who hesitated did not. The shovel also shaped battlefield behavior. German units advanced differently, halted differently, and defended differently because they knew every man carried the means to fortify his position instantly. This reduced panic and increased cohesion under fire. In contrast, armies that treated entrenching tools as secondary gear often suffered higher casualties during sudden engagements. German soldiers understood this reality deeply. The Klappspaten was not a tool for comfort or convenience. It was a personal shield against modern firepower. Although officially classified as an entrenching tool, the Klappspaten quickly proved itself to be far more than a shovel. On the battlefield, German soldiers discovered that survival demanded versatility, and the folding shovel quietly filled roles no manual fully anticipated. In defensive positions, the Klappspaten was used to cut firing steps, shape parapets, and reinforce trench walls. Soldiers used it to chop roots, clear debris, and break apart frozen earth when pickaxes were unavailable. Its hardened steel blade, designed to resist bending, made it effective in environments where other tools failed. Field reports from the Eastern Front describe infantrymen using the Klappspaten to smash ice and create drainage channels, preventing foxholes from flooding and freezing overnight. In North Africa, the same tool was used to dig shallow shelters in hard-packed desert soil, where speed mattered more than depth. The shovel also served non-engineering purposes. Soldiers used it to pry open crates, cut wire, and prepare cooking pits. In emergency situations, it became a hammer, a lever, or a step for climbing out of trenches. Some units even used it to mark graves when fallen comrades could not be properly buried. In close combat, the Klappspaten took on a darker role. Many soldiers sharpened its edge, aware that trench fighting often occurred at arm's length. While rarely mentioned in official records, veterans later admitted that the shovel could be deadlier than a bayonet in confined spaces. It was silent, solid, and always within reach. This adaptability was no accident. The Klappspaten's strength, balance, and folding design made it suitable for tasks far beyond digging. It embodied the German emphasis on multifunctional equipment, tools that earned their place by doing many jobs well. On the battlefield, survival depended on what a soldier carried, and few items proved as quietly indispensable as the Klappspaten. On the front lines of World War II, speed was often the only defense a soldier had. Not speed of movement, but speed of digging. Artillery did not announce itself politely, and air attacks gave little warning. When firepower arrived, only those already below ground stood a real chance of survival. German after-action reports repeatedly emphasized how quickly infantry units were expected to entrench. On the Eastern Front, Soviet artillery barrages could begin within minutes of contact. Veterans recalled hearing the first distant shell and immediately dropping to the ground, unfolding their Klappspaten, and digging with frantic precision. Those who hesitated often did not survive the next minute. During the Battle of Kursk, one of the largest engagements in history, German infantry faced constant shelling and counterattacks. Soldiers dug shallow foxholes wherever they halted, sometimes improving them only inches at a time between barrages. Even a depression less than half a meter deep could deflect shrapnel and absorb blast pressure. It was not comfort that mattered, it was angles and cover. In Normandy, Allied troops later observed abandoned German positions that seemed hastily dug but strategically placed. These shallow pits showed clear signs of rapid entrenchment under fire. Soldiers had carved protection into the earth using nothing but seconds and muscle memory. Medical reports supported what frontline soldiers already knew. Casualty rates dropped sharply among units that entrenched immediately after stopping. Shrapnel wounds to the torso and head were significantly reduced when soldiers were partially covered, even by shallow earthworks. The phrase "dig or die" was never an official slogan, but it reflected battlefield reality. Digging fast did not guarantee survival, but failing to dig almost guaranteed exposure. In modern war, firepower dominates the surface. Those who lived learned one simple truth: the earth itself was the first line of defense. The U.S. Army did not immediately recognize the importance of the German Klappspaten. In the early years of World War II, American forces relied on heavier, rigid entrenching tools, adequate on training grounds, but often impractical under fire. It was only through direct battlefield contact that American commanders began to notice a critical difference. During the North African Campaign in 1942 and 1943, U.S. troops encountered German defensive positions that seemed to appear almost instantly. After engagements, American soldiers examined captured equipment and noticed the compact folding shovels carried by nearly every German infantryman. Reports sent up the chain of command mentioned how quickly German soldiers could entrench, even in hard, rocky terrain. The lesson became clearer in Italy. As Allied forces advanced through mountainous regions under constant artillery threat, American units struggled to dig in quickly. German troops, even while retreating, left behind shallow but effective foxholes. U.S. engineers and ordnance officers began collecting and testing German entrenching tools, comparing them directly with American models. By the time of the Normandy landings, awareness had spread. American soldiers on the beaches and hedgerows of France faced the same brutal reality of exposure. Captured Klappspaten were often kept and used by U.S. troops, not as souvenirs, but as practical replacements for their own gear. Veterans later recalled that the German shovel just worked better when seconds mattered. Official evaluations followed. U.S. Army reports acknowledged the efficiency of the folding design, particularly its portability and speed of deployment. However, adoption was cautious. While the physical form was studied, the deeper doctrine behind its use, immediate entrenchment as instinct, was harder to integrate. The U.S. Army had noticed the shovel. What it had not yet fully absorbed was the philosophy that made it so effective. As the war progressed, the U.S. Army began adapting its equipment based on battlefield lessons, and the German Klappspaten became an obvious reference point. American engineers studied captured examples and introduced folding entrenching tools that visually resembled the German design. On paper, the problem seemed solved. But copying the shape was not the same as copying the system behind it. German entrenching doctrine treated the shovel as a primary survival instrument. Soldiers were trained from the beginning to deploy it instantly, dig instinctively, and improve positions continuously. Speed, muscle memory, and terrain awareness were as important as the tool itself. The Klappspaten worked because every soldier knew exactly when and how to use it. American versions, by contrast, were often designed with different priorities. Production speed and standardization mattered more than durability or balance. Some models used thinner steel, looser locking mechanisms, or hinges that degraded quickly under stress. While functional in controlled conditions, they were less reliable in frozen ground or rocky soil. More importantly, the mindset differed. Many U.S. units still relied on engineers for prepared defenses, viewing individual entrenchment as temporary or secondary. Training emphasized mobility and firepower over immediate digging. As a result, the folding shovel became equipment to be used when time allowed, not a reflexive response to danger. Veterans later noted the contrast. German positions, even improvised ones, were consistently shaped to minimize exposure and maximize cover. American foxholes varied widely in quality, depending on time, terrain, and unit experience. The U.S. Army eventually improved both its tools and its doctrine, but the lesson came slowly. The failure was not mechanical, it was conceptual. America copied the shovel, but not the philosophy that made it a weapon against modern firepower. As the U.S. Army expanded rapidly during World War II, industrial speed became a strategic priority. Millions of tools had to be produced quickly, shipped across oceans, and issued to soldiers with minimal delay. This reality shaped the materials and manufacturing choices behind American entrenching tools and created a quiet but important contrast with the German Klappspaten. German production, especially in the early and middle years of the war, emphasized durability over volume. Klappspaten blades were typically forged from high-carbon steel and heat-treated to withstand repeated impact. Hinges were thick, tightly machined, and designed to remain rigid even after months of abuse. This allowed the shovel to function reliably in frozen soil, rubble, and rocky terrain. American folding shovels, while well-designed in theory, were often produced with thinner steel to save weight and materials. Locking mechanisms varied between manufacturers, leading to inconsistent performance in the field. Some soldiers reported blades bending when striking roots or stones, or hinges loosening after prolonged use. These were not catastrophic failures, but they cost time. In combat, time was everything. A shovel that flexed or failed under pressure forced soldiers to dig slower or switch tools. Field reports from Europe mention American troops borrowing or keeping captured German shovels because they trusted them more under harsh conditions. The differences reflected deeper industrial philosophies. Germany built tools to survive extreme use by fewer soldiers. The United States built acceptable tools for many soldiers quickly. Both approaches made sense strategically, but they produced different battlefield results. Over time, U.S. manufacturing improved. Later models became stronger and more reliable as feedback reached factories. Yet the early gap left a lasting impression on soldiers who experienced both. The war proved that material quality was not just a manufacturing detail. For the soldiers who carried them, entrenching tools were judged not by design specifications, but by whether they worked when fear and exhaustion took over. On the front lines of World War II, opinions about shovels were shaped by mud, ice, and incoming fire. German veterans frequently described the Klappspaten as an extension of their own bodies. Many recalled being able to unfold it in the dark without looking, digging instinctively while shells exploded nearby. In post-war interviews, former Wehrmacht infantrymen emphasized reliability above all else. The shovel did not bend, the hinge did not fail, and that consistency built confidence under pressure. American soldiers, especially those who had fought in Italy and France, noticed the difference firsthand. Some recalled frustration with issued entrenching tools that felt flimsy in hard ground. Several veterans admitted keeping captured German shovels, despite regulations, because they trusted them more. One U.S. infantryman later wrote that the German shovel bit into the ground like it wanted to be there. These comparisons were not about national pride but survival. Soldiers respected whatever kept them alive. In Normandy, American troops digging into hedgerow soil found German foxholes that were shallow yet precisely shaped. Many remarked that these positions offered better protection than deeper but poorly formed holes. Yet American experience evolved. Units that survived long enough adapted quickly. Soldiers modified techniques, reinforced hinges, and learned to dig smarter, not just harder. By late 1944, experienced U.S. infantry often matched German entrenchment speed, regardless of equipment. The shared lesson across both armies was clear. Tools mattered, but training and habit mattered more. The soldiers who lived longest were those who treated digging as urgently as shooting. In the memories of veterans, the shovel rarely appears in medals or photographs, but it appears often in stories of survival. The story of the Klappspaten is more than a tale of steel and soil. It is a lesson in foresight, adaptability, and the integration of equipment into doctrine. For the German army, the folding shovel was not merely a tool, it was a vital component of survival. Soldiers learned that a well-trained mind, coupled with reliable equipment, could turn seconds into life-saving advantages. Modern military historians often highlight this principle when studying World War II infantry tactics. The Klappspaten demonstrates that even seemingly simple objects can have outsized impact when embedded within a coherent operational philosophy. Its design reflected an understanding of terrain, speed, and human behavior under stress, factors still critical in contemporary military engineering. The influence of the Klappspaten is evident today. Modern entrenching tools, from NATO-issued collapsible shovels to specialized survival kits, carry forward its core principles: compactness, multifunctionality, and durability. Military manuals continue to stress rapid entrenchment, and soldiers are trained to treat their shovels as extensions of themselves, echoing lessons first learned on the battlefields of Europe. Beyond the military, the philosophy endures in survival and outdoor communities. Compact, multipurpose tools are valued for their ability to combine utility with portability, an idea first proven by the Klappspaten. It is a reminder that design alone is insufficient. Doctrine, training, and practical application determine effectiveness. In the end, the forgotten lesson of the Klappspaten is timeless. A tool is only as valuable as the knowledge, discipline, and ingenuity applied through it. From frozen Eastern Front battlefields to modern survival kits, this unassuming folding shovel continues to teach the same enduring truth: preparation, speed, and adaptability save.